Okay, grab your popcorn, because I'm about to blow your mind with a story about the OG glow-up of screens. Imagine, if you will, the very first image ever transmitted on what would become our beloved television. It wasn't a dashing hero, an exciting ball game, or even a recognizable face. Nope, it was just a line. A little wobbly, super faint, almost invisible line, flickering in a makeshift lab. Talk about humble beginnings, right? This wasn't some fancy corporate unveiling either. This was the audacious proof from a 21-year-old farm boy, fresh off the potato fields of Idaho, who dreamed of this moment since he was a teenager. And that humble little line? It actually ignited one of the most epic David versus Goliath battles in invention history. Spoiler alert, David had a really good idea. We're practically swimming in screens these days, aren't we? From the tiny one in your pocket to that massive cinematic display in your living room, high-definition moving pictures are as common as, well, air. It's super hard to imagine a time without them, but less than a century ago, the world was visually silent, if you can believe it. News came from newspapers, and entertainment was all about the radio. If you wanted to actually see something far away back then, you pretty much had to pack your bags and go there yourself. So the race to bring television to life was absolutely fierce. Labs globally were buzzing with innovation, tinkering with all sorts of mechanical contraptions, spinning discs and whirring gears, desperately trying to capture and project a moving image. They were complicated, clunky, and honestly, a bit of a hot mess. Enter our hero, Philo Farnsworth, not from some ritzy university or a mega-funded industrial lab, but from a small farm in Rigby, Idaho. Philo was a real brainiac. At just 14 years old, while plowing rhythmic rows in his family's potato field, a revolutionary idea literally struck him. He realized an image could be broken down, scanned line by line, much like those furrows in the dirt, but using electrons, invisible, weightless, and lightning fast. He rushed home, practically dragging his high school chemistry teacher, Justin Tolman, to the blackboard. Imagine a 16-year-old explaining not just an equation, but a complete game changer for visual communication. Tolman, probably a little bewildered but definitely impressed, kept that sketch. It would eventually become priceless. Philo was absolutely convinced that the existing mechanical methods were a total dead end. His vision was a completely electronic system. An image dissector tube to capture light, zip it into an electron stream, transmit it, and then an electron gun to paint it back onto a screen. Pure electricity, no moving parts required. But most of the scientific establishment, they kind of saw him as a naive farm boy chasing an impossible dream. Oh, how wrong they were. Driven by this almost obsessive spark, Farnsworth, now in his early 20s, moved to San Francisco. He managed to snag some initial funding from a few brave investors who clearly saw the genius twinkling behind his slightly rough-around-the-edges exterior. He transformed a rented second-floor apartment into his lab. Picture a chaotic, wonderful mess of exposed wires, vacuum tubes, and a faint, delightful smell of ozone. Days just melted into nights. Failures? Oh, they mounted like crazy. Components blew, connections frayed. Those crucial vacuum tubes, the very heart of his system, were unbelievably tricky to create and maintain. He was literally inventing components as he went along, tackling problem after problem that had absolutely no precedent. It wasn't just about making something work. It was about inventing the rules for how it could work. His team was tiny, operating on a shoestring budget, battling constant skepticism, and always facing the terrifying threat of running out of money. He knew the stakes were ridiculously high, not just for him, but for the entire world. Thousands of miles away, corporate Goliaths like RCA were pouring fortunes into their own television research. Their scientists, especially one Vladimir Zworykin, were also pursuing electronic television. But Farnsworth was dead set that his image dissector was the one true path. It was a race against time, against massive resources, and honestly, against the very limits of contemporary physics. Then came September 7th, 1927. The San Francisco air was practically vibrating with anticipation. In the hushed lab, Farnsworth's tiny team gathered. They had been trying for weeks, months, even years for this exact moment. The image dissector tube, painstakingly crafted, was finally ready. A single glass slide with a simple straight line drawn on it was carefully inserted as the very first image. Philo gave the signal, power flowed, and then, in an adjacent room, on a small, dark screen, a faint, flickering, blue-tinted line appeared. It wavered, it shimmered, but it was there. The very first all-electronic television image had been successfully transmitted. You guys, this is huge! And Philo Taylor Farnsworth, just 21 years old, reportedly turned to his absolutely stunned team and declared, "There you are, electronic television. It wasn't perfect, it was barely visible, but it was proof. A farm boy with an impossible dream had just invented the future." How's that for a mic drop moment? Farnsworth's breakthrough was undeniable. To really impress his investors, he later transmitted something far more compelling than just a straight line, a dollar sign. A pretty clear indication of the immense commercial potential bubbling under the surface of his invention. Ka-ching! But the corporate behemoth RCA wasn't about to let a lone inventor stand in their shining path. In 1930, Vladimir Zvorykin, RCA's top scientist, brazenly waltzed into Farnsworth's lab, claiming to be just curious. Yeah, right. He was clearly there to reverse engineer Philo's methods. That wasn't curiosity, it was an intelligence mission. RCA, under the iron fist of its president, David Sarnoff, launched a decade-long campaign to acquire Farnsworth's patents, initially offering a measly $100,000. Farnsworth, being fiercely independent, basically said, "Hard pass." What followed was a brutal David versus Goliath patent war. RCA, with its almost limitless legal funds, relentlessly challenged Farnsworth's claims. They argued that their own scientists had developed similar concepts earlier. They even resorted to strong-arm tactics, threatening companies like Philco with patent blockades if they dared to work with Farnsworth. This totally crippled his commercial progress and took a horrific personal toll, pushing him to the brink of financial ruin and, sadly, a nervous breakdown. But then, in 1934, a miracle! The courts actually sided with Farnsworth. The crucial piece of evidence? Remember that high school chemistry teacher, Justin Tolman? His blackboard sketch? Confirming Farnsworth's electronic scanning idea years before RCA's claims? Totally sealed the victory. RCA was forced to admit Farnsworth's priority and license his technology. They eventually settled for a groundbreaking $1 million. A huge sum for the time, yes, but for a technology that would literally define the 20th century, it was just a tiny fraction of its true worth. Farnsworth had definitely won the battle, but he kind of lost the war. The continuous litigation, the financial strain, and the sheer mental exhaustion had completely burnt him out. RCA, having licensed his core patents, was then free to dominate the burgeoning television industry. And poor Philo, the visionary who gave us electronic sight, grew deeply disillusioned with the direction television eventually took. He famously called much of its content a wasteland, a far cry from the educational and connecting tool he had originally envisioned. From that faint, trembling line in a dusty San Francisco lab, television just blossomed. Today, our screens are measured in inches, our resolution in 4K or 8K, and our images are vibrant, instant, and absolutely everywhere. We binge watch, we game, we connect across entire continents. It's pretty amazing, really. But just imagine the sheer audacity of Philo Farnsworth's first electronic television! It was a crude, unstable contraption of glass, wires, and vacuums. The image was tiny, monochromatic, and barely discernible. There was no remote, no streaming, no hundreds of channels. Just a flickering line, a single symbol of scientific triumph over clunky mechanical limitations. Yet, without that stubborn Idaho farm boy and his electrifying vision, our modern world of screens simply would not exist. Philo Farnsworth's story is such a powerful reminder that truly revolutionary ideas often spring from the most unexpected places, and that the fight for pure innovation can be a lonely, grueling one, even when you're right. So, here's a thought-provoking question for you. What if Philo Farnsworth had simply given up, totally overwhelmed by the corporate might of RCA? How would our world be different today without his relentless determination and that little flickering line? This channel, by the way, absolutely loves exploring the untold stories of every first thing that shaped our world. From the very first photograph to the first computer, revolutionary first inventions await, each with its own dramatic tale of genius, struggle, and incredible breakthrough. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let's uncover the amazing origins of the greatest innovations humanity has ever known together. You won't want to miss it.